This is Steven Diego, and you're tuned in to Breaking Down the Breakdown. On today's episode, we talk about the 1-year anniversary of my diagnosis for my mental health disorder, and we'll see how far I've come. Hello, everybody. Hi. Welcome to Breaking Down the Breakdown. I love how he said that, kind of like Missy Elliott, and welcome to Moulin Rouge or something like that. Anyways, I just want to say this is a super special episode. This is the first time I've done this live, not on Facebook, but on Twitch, and also on Twitter. For a lot of you who don't know, I actually kind of moonlight as a Twitter guy, something we call alters. You guys can Google that if you want. But I'm kind of nervous about today's episode because I know lately, if you guys follow the podcast, I've been getting involved with a lot of guests is coming on talking about themselves. It is Mental Health Awareness Week. And it is super fucking important for me to kind of get the ball rolling on this platform, because I feel like, a lot of us would say that, it shouldn't be just a whole week for mental health awareness. It should be every day. But the reality is it's not, right? There are a lot of things happening in the world, and I am just glad that we're even taking the time to even shed some light on this. But without further ado, I'm going to get started because I'm going to try to make this quick and easy. I don't have a guest to kind of feed off of with, but I am live. If you have any questions or anything that you guys want to share at the same time that I'm doing this, remember guys, people are listening, people are probably watching, but yeah, so it's been quite a while since I have talked about what had happened to me, and I'm just gonna kind of do a quick recap, because it's been a year since I got released from the psych ward. I mean, people don't like calling it that, so we call it a mental health unit. And there is a lot to reflect on. There is a lot to kind of just think about and talk about. Unfortunately, I feel like my friends are so sick and tired of me talking about it and hearing about it, and that's okay. I don't hold it against them. But to me, it is important that I kind of open people's minds up about these things. And for most of you who also suffer from mental health disorders, that is kind of one of our biggest fears, is the fact that there might be people out there that we care about, or that we tend to kind of draw strength from, or we tend to kind of like our go-to person, and once they find out everything, it's almost as if they kind of detach themselves from you. And I know that's a lot of concern for a lot of people, and this is where we kind of start to develop walls. We kind of start this whole judgment of ourselves. We tend to think like, oh my god, but what would they think? And for a second, I want you guys to just be able to drop that kind of mentality at the door. Just check it there, and just realize that you and your mental health and your health in general is so much more bigger than what other people might think of you. And I hope that after listening to this episode, you guys kind of realize that, hey, you know what? I really shouldn't be shamed into thinking that whatever I have, I shouldn't be able to share with people, or I shouldn't talk about anymore, But anyway, this is kind of like a checkpoint for me, because I'll be honest, I never thought that I would be sitting here right now talking to any of you like this at all. Even when I first started my podcast, I really just kind of wanted an outlet to be able to talk about the things that were happening to me, and I never imagined it would evolve into something like this. So I'm eternally grateful. But Just a quick recap of quick recap. I can't even fucking speak with these braces on. Just a quick recap of what had happened. Long story short, I tried edibles for the first time. I did not know that I wasn't supposed to. I mean, who knows if they're supposed to or not, right? And it's kind of like the important part of this whole thing is I am not against drugs whatsoever. I really am not. Recreational drugs, like I'm not really against it. What I am against is the fact that people willy nilly just are able to do these things without first kind of understanding that maybe they shouldn't because they have underlying health issues or underlying mental health conditions, which I did not know I had, but apparently I did. We'll go back to that later, but essentially what had happened was I took too much for my first time because I didn't know. Now, they were brownies made by my friends, and one of my best friends who was there, actually, she warned me. She's like, don't eat too much, Stephen. Don't eat too much. And I'm like, I'm not eating too much. But I was hungry, so I ate too much. And, that was my biggest mistake. Now, it wasn't like I ate it, and then it hit me like that, and I went berserk. It was great. It was a great time. I remember laughing. I remember, having such a great time. I was like, wow, this is the first time I felt really high. And, lo and behold, I was so fucking high, and it was amazing. But that all started crashing down because I decided to, take a nap. I was like, nah, I'm tired. I'm gonna go sleep. I went into my room, turned off my lights, and that's when the nightmare began. And I thought it was just a bad trip, and it was, but I didn't realize that it was a full-blown psychotic episode. And in that episode, trigger warning, guys, if you have triggers, if you hear something kind of violent, now might not be the right time to listen. But in that episode, I had thought, and this is very important, it is very important to note, because back then I didn't know that they were just thoughts, but I had thought that I can see 10 seconds into the future, and in this altered future that I didn't know was literally just my thoughts, I had gone on and killed all of my roommates and my best friends. For anybody who knows me, this is not something I would ever even think of. So for me, you can just imagine the terror, the horror, oh my fucking god, I have to run downstairs and warn them. And that's exactly what happened. I came downstairs, I saw my best friend, she was sitting there, and she's pregnant, mind you guys. She was pregnant at the time. And I looked at her and I'm like, I'm about to have a bad trip. Where are the guys? She calls them up, and that's when I told them, you guys need to hold me down. And they're like, why? And I'm like, I think I'm about to kill all of you. Thankfully, they didn't take that lightly. And they knew that it was about to be a bad trip. So, they know what they were doing. So they held me down. And when I finally felt safe to let go, I let go. And that's when I started screaming my lungs out. Screaming bloody murder, because in my head, it was happening. In my head, I couldn't stop it. In my head, the vision was I had already, this is predetermined. This is gonna happen no matter what. No matter what anybody does, it's gonna happen. To this day, talking about it still gives me kind of chills because, with this whole thing, I will explain it. I developed intrusive thoughts that everybody has, but for me, it's just a lot worse. But anyways, back to the story. So, in my head, I thought it was going to happen regardless. That I thought that if they let me go that night, I was about to do what my thoughts were showing me, what was being done in the future. And yeah, it was the worst. In my head, felt like an eternity. I actually had told them, when people ask me what happened, I tell people I felt like I went to hell. I feel like I know what hell feels like now. Hell is when you had to relive the day over and over again. The worst day of your life, where you made the worst mistake you could ever make. And for me, it was that. Where you make the most painful decision you could have ever made. Where it's that one moment that you will regret for the rest of your life. And you have to relive it over and over again, knowing that you're gonna relive it again in a few minutes and it's never going to stop. That was hell for me. And that sounds like hell. So I was convinced I was in hell. I was convinced that this was my punishment for actually doing what my thoughts were warning me was about to happen. I thought I went to hell. And when I came back, I was so happy to see that they were alive. I was happy to see that they were still holding on to me. You know, at some point, it just kind of leveled off into just me being high and having trip outs, you know, like where I would see like two versions of myself, kind of like, oh no, I'm in a time warp, I gotta pull myself back and stuff like that. And I slept it off. They made sure they were with me when I slept. Is how much I loved them, how much they loved me. And the next day, you know, I was just telling them, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. It wasn't until 2 days after that I realized something was off, because I was still thinking the same thoughts. I still felt like, oh my God, like I'm gonna end up killing them. And I was like, what is happening? So I tried to ignore it. I told them, like, you know, like something's kind of weird. I feel kind of weird. I ignored it. But as the days went on, it got worse and worse and worse. I didn't know these were anxieties. I didn't know these were called intrusive thoughts. I knew nothing at the time. Well, all I thought was that I took drugs and it fucked my brain up, you know? And in that moment, I kept saying, I regret doing it. I regret doing it. It wasn't until the night of May 5th that I was about to go to sleep and an intrusive thought went into my head. An intrusive thought that probably pops up into a normal person's head. You know, sometimes you have thoughts where you're gonna go kick a baby. You're gonna go slap your friend for no reason. You're gonna go grab a knife and stab somebody just because you're, I don't know, no fucking reason at all. Things that make you go, oh my God, what the fuck? And then you move on. But for my condition that I didn't know I had, that was a death sentence to me. Like, it felt like a death sentence because it was something that I couldn't get out of. And that night, that thought brought on the craziest anxiety, because in my head, my thoughts were like, tonight's the night I'm going to kill them. I immediately started praying. I immediately started getting into a panic attack, and I had to calm myself down. And I picked up the phone and I didn't call 911 because I knew it was an immediate emergency, because I was aware of things. But I called a hotline. It's called telehealth here in Canada. And, you know, told them what was going on. They told me, okay, asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, I want to check into an institution, because, you know, it is the same thing to do. And they agreed. And I texted my roommates. I'm like, I'm so sorry, guys. I have to go. I don't want to hurt any of you. And I'm so scared that if I stay here, it's going to happen. And I get to the hospital. And mistakes were made. By mistakes, I mean, I should have listened to the psychiatrist that saw me first. But, you know, in some ways, I'm glad I didn't listen to him, because I never would have known what was going on with me if I didn't force myself into admission. Because they saw me, they evaluated me, they asked me everything that happened, I told them everything that happened. And you know what? The psychiatrist told me, he was like, you're just, you know, it's just a bad reaction. I'm like, it's been 2.5 weeks, sir. By all means, bad reaction. I can't explain it. And he said, what has stuck with me the most to this day, you're never going to hurt anybody. And I said to him, how do you know? Because I feel like I am. And he said, the fact that you chose to bring yourself here, and that you were so scared that you were going to end up doing that, you're never going to hurt anybody. And at the time, I was stubborn. At the time, I didn't want to give it too much attention, because I'm like, no, like, I need to stay here. I want to make sure my friends are safe. I want to make sure the people I love are safe. I want to make sure people are safe. I want to make sure I'm good. And he said, honestly, I can give you some pills and you can go home. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I am checking myself in. He said, it might get worse if you check in. I'm like, how is that going to get any worse? It's going to get worse if I go home. Because I don't know what's going on with me. He said, okay, well, We'll see if I can make a bed. Now, mind you guys, this is at the height of the start of COVID. So for all of you people who have videos of look at this room. There's nobody here. It's a lie. COVID's a lie. Nobody's dying in ICUs. Trust me. Those people probably went to a wing that they reserve for emergencies like me, knowing that those rooms need to be empty for other emergencies other than COVID, because they need somewhere to put other patients as well. So guys, broaden your perspectives, okay? I've been there. I was in the ER. I saw the wing where they had all of the patients lined up in their own beds, not even fucking separated by anything, because there was nowhere else for them to go. Because they needed space for people like me or anybody else with other kinds of emergencies. Now, anyways, that's not gonna be there. I just kind of want to add that in. Anyway, they were able to put me in a room, and I saw another psychiatrist who then told me that I had experienced, and what I am probably going through, was brief acute psychotic disorder. Now, hearing the words psychotic, that latched onto me. That scared the fuck out of me, right? Anybody who would hear that you were psychotic, you'll get scared. Because the immediate thing you would think about is, what can I do? What could I possibly do knowing I'm psychotic? This is so scary. I'm glad I stayed. I'm gonna kind of fast forward this story because, there's not a lot really. There's a lot of the same things. But long story short, what you guys need to know was, they thought I had brief acute psychotic disorder, and they discharged me after a few days. He had given me antipsychotics that I had to take, obviously, to help me sleep. And he referred me to a psychotherapist. It wasn't until I saw the psychotherapist that I started realizing what was going on with me. And about 3 months into seeing the psychotherapist, I started to realize something else was wrong. Brief acute psychotic disorder lasts for at least a month. After the month, and maybe I shouldn't have been checking, in mental health stuff, you shouldn't really be checking the days. Like, oh my god, how long is it gonna last? But way after a month, I was still experiencing the same symptoms, the same intrusive thoughts of, I'm gonna go into grabbing this knife and stabbing everybody. I'm gonna go downstairs. I'm gonna kill my best friend. I'm gonna go and kill myself because I don't want to live anymore, because this is so painful. Why don't I just down all of these pills and kill myself right now? These things that were not like me. To the point where, oh my god, like I know thank goodness, like I knew I wasn't possessed, but it's to the point where I was like, I wish I was, because, I could exercise myself. But again, I don't want to deal with that, or even that's kind of triggering for me, but it's that bad. But I knew something was off when, after that month, I still wasn't really feeling a little good. So I decided to do my own thing, my own research. And with the help of my psychotherapist, he was very supportive. I started to look into what my symptoms were like. And I had to, this is the one time where Google was my friend, and the one time where WebMDing yourself actually paid off. Because I was able to compile all of my symptoms, everything that was happening to me every day. And it was the same things in a cycle, over and over and over again. And OCD came up. Now, at this point, I thought OCD was just, oh my god, I need to clean, or oh my god, this isn't symmetrical, I gotta fix it. So at first I was like, that can't be OCD. But I'm like, what if it's a mixture? It's a possibility. And that's when I started realizing that harm OCD was a thing. And there were 4 different types of OCD, and one of them just happened to be harm OCD. I presented this idea to my psychotherapist, and he looked at me and he said, like, the psychiatrists weren't able to pick up on it because, you were only there for a few days, but it could very well be a possibility. So he set me up with a psychiatrist, a different psychiatrist that was able to actually, evaluate me, because at the hospital, it was like a 5-minute visit, and then they just kind of like dip. And So we explored that idea, and I started kind of like doing my own cognitive behavioral therapy that my therapist provided me that actually helps with cognitive distortions, which helps people who suffer from schizophrenia or even psychosis or OCD. So it was nice to know that I had tools to help me set up. Um, when the psychiatrists were finally able to see me, it was a few months before they were able to see me because remember, guys, COVID at the height. At this point, it was hard to book anything. Um, in between that, I stopped taking the antipsychotics because it started giving me weird side effects where my face would start to tingle, and I was like, this isn't right. Finally realizing I might have OCD, I went to my family doctor, and he decided to put me on antidepressants because that is actually one of the very few things that helps people manage OCD. Was taking SSRIs, as they call it. Um, so guys, if you have OCD and you didn't know that you could deal with it, you totally can. And if it's not manageable without any pills, ask your psychiatrists. And I say this because my general practitioner is great, but maybe not on that side. But ask your psychiatrist about SSRIs to help you guys kind of like bridge yourself to be able to do things before fully taking on OCD just by writing or just by doing cognitive behavioral therapy on your own. Now, I took these pills for 2 to 3 days, and at first it was okay. I just felt kind of numb. But on the third day, I woke up and had a full-blown flashback episode. And flashbacks are not fun for anybody who can tell you. Anybody who's been PTSD or has had traumas, a flashback brings you back to whatever that traumatic experience was and makes you think you are reliving that day again. That wasn't supposed to happen when you're on SSRIs. Anxiety is part of the side effects. You should be highly anxious, but a flashback is a no. Called my general practitioner, told them, this is what happened. He said, no, you have to keep taking them. And I said, hell no, I'm not going to do that to myself. Thank you very much. And he said, no, you have to keep taking them because it needs time in your body to take effect. And I'm like, fuck, no. I know enough to know that this isn't right. And I made that executive decision because I was able to manage it without the pills before. I can take this away from me and manage again. So I stopped taking the cold turkey. My anxiety went through the roof, but guess what? I didn't have another flashback episode. So I was happy. When I was finally able to see that psychiatrist, and she confirmed that it was OCD. At first, they thought that it was a case of pandas. Now, pandas is when a child develops strep throat, they also develop OCD. So they thought that the cannabis had done the same effect to me, where it triggered something in my brain and it started looping and became OCD. But then me and my psychiatrist find out later on that I've actually had OCD my entire life. But the most important thing that I took away from my psychiatrist was the fact that I had been allergic to SSRIs and SNRIs, and I was not supposed to take them. So that was a huge thing. That was one of the biggest things out of all of this, because I was able to breathe a sigh of relief knowing that, that's why that happened to me with the antidepressants. But then I also realized I'm kind of fucked because I'm not able to take anything to help me manage my OCD. And that kind of put me in a funk, I'm not going to lie. Because it's very hard to manage sometimes. At least back then. Imagine waking up every day having that fear that you might hurt somebody that day. It's not fun. So, yeah, it was very depressing. But then I kind of started realizing, if I still think the way that I do, And if I still kind of, how do I say this, have the same outlook on my condition, the way I've looked at it these past few months, then I've really not learned anything from my therapy. And that's when I started realizing, I should look at this more positively. And that's hard for people to do, because for people, they tend to think that positivity goes hand in hand with happiness. And that's actually not true at all, especially in this case. So I decided, you know what? Let's look on the bright side of things. What is the bright side of this? The bright side was the pills could have been the forever thing. But majority of these people, they actually use the pills to try to get them to that stage where they won't need the pills anymore, so that they can wean off of the pills and be able to manage it without any of the aids. And it's, if you need the pills forever, that's cool. It's just like taking vitamins. It's okay. But if you really don't want to be on the pill and you really just want to learn how to do it on your own, that's cool too. Because remember, guys, you can rewire your brain. That is the thing. You're able to rewire your brain. It's behavioral therapy 101. So I just look at it from that aspect. That, hey, you know what? I'm just skipping a stage. I skipped the take medication stage, and I'm in the I gotta learn to manage this with good old-fashioned therapy stage. And for months, it's been a few months since I was at that stage. I've just been doing that same thing. I've read a lot of books on OCD. I've read a lot of other books that didn't have to do with OCD. There are things, actually, if you are experiencing OCD, guys, or any mental health disorders, one of the biggest things that you guys can look into is about self-compassion. That's actually one of the few things that made this whole process for me bearable. And also made me realize that that's something I never had for myself. I knew I was very compassionate towards other people, and that's one important thing about my OCD. Harm OCD, majority of the time, develops in people who care about other people more. That's the way OCD works. That's the way intrusive thoughts work. Intrusive thoughts make you think of the worst things you could ever think of. For me, it's killing people. I mean, it should be for a lot of people, right? But for a lot of people, there's other worse things, right? Your intrusive thoughts could be, oh my goodness, I got drunk last night. Did I cheat on my partner? Even though you drank at home by yourself, your intrusive thoughts can develop things, right? Your intrusive thoughts can develop things like, like scenarios, fake scenarios in your head that you're going to start questioning. And you're like, fuck, did that happen? And it's going to make you want to go back. And this is what OCD is like. Until you start doing compulsions. For me, it's mental checking. That's my compulsion. It's me reaffirming to myself, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm a good person. I'm like this, I'm like that. For people, they wash clothes. They wash dishes. They wash the floor. They wash their hands. Because they believe if they don't wash their hands 52 times, somebody is going to die. That's the reality of OCD. And a lot of us, we're quick to say, oh my God, I'm so OCD because I'm like this. That's called OCPD. It is a thing. But you take pride and you take pleasure in seeing things in a clean fashion or in a symmetrical fashion. Like you get upset when people, knock something over because you're like, no, it's not perfect now. Let me put that there. But there's no fear attached to that. So guys, I just kind of want to remind you, there might be people out there who act kind of socially awkward or anxious, and it's quick for us to say, oh my God, they're so fucking weird. But we don't know what's going on in their heads. And it's so funny that I'm saying this because I am usually a social butterfly. Before any of this happened, I would be the life of the motherfucking party. I was the best drunk you could ever think of, and the worst at the same time. But after developing this or realizing how much worse my OCD had gotten, I became that person. One of my biggest regrets was going to my best friend's wedding. Okay, 2 of my best friends got married to each other. I was one of the groomsmen, and I had to leave early because my OCD brought on intrusive thoughts that I was going to go and kill them in front of all their friends and families. I sat there shaking in my chair, about to burst into tears, because I was so scared that it was about to happen. That I told my keyboard player, one of my good friends, I looked at him and I'm like, we have to get out of here now. Imagine seeing your groomsmen standing up in the middle of your, it was a reception at least, but still, it was so early in the night. It was maybe like 7 p.m. The wedding started at 5. And me saying, I have to go. I'm so sorry. I just can't be here right now. It was hard. And it's one of the things I'm going to regret the most. Because I actually really let OCD win that day. And I keep going back to thinking, wow, imagine if I had just stayed. Because that's actually how you combat this. They call it exposure response prevention. Exposure therapy. Where you actually go to where the danger is, or where you think the danger is. And so many times I've actually been doing that. And I've never felt so much better about managing it. And I really wish, this is one of those things where I wish I had stayed. Because maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't still have the same fears I have when I see them, when I think about them, when I hear them, when I snap them. To this day, they would snap me, I would see them, and I would laugh. I'd be like, oh, I miss them so much. Then my brain would go, if I see them, I'm going to kill them. And it makes me not want to talk to them for weeks, because I want to forget about it, because I don't want to think that way. And now I force myself to text them. I force myself to snap them every time I think about these things. Because I want to remind myself, this is an intrusive thought, and it's okay. Because intrusive thoughts always is the opposite of what I actually think and what I actually want. What I want is attention from them because I miss my fucking best friends. They used to live with me. They're the ones who got me through this whole thing before they got married and they moved out. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be alive. So naturally, my intrusive thoughts are going to attack them or my family. But anyway, this was very heavy, I understand. And I'm just, okay, to all my streamers, to all my podcasters that are listening right now and people are watching on YouTube, I am actually live on Twitch and I am live on Twitter as well. And the comments are very interesting. Someone said, "Kill me please, daddy." As I'm talking about this very triggering thing, and somebody just said, "Agreed." Thank you, Princess Peepee, for saying everything's alright. Katniss, yes, I know I'm on. And Macedon, I know it is scary. Hello, Reno and Gary. Gary and Jay. Oh my goodness, I'm flipping that way. Anyway, sorry. And this is what happens when I have live episodes, right, guys? I decided to do this live because I wanted to see, or I want to show people that when I do these shows, when I do these episodes, I don't cut anything. I don't edit anything. Everything has to come out naturally. Everything has to be from the heart. Nothing is scripted. And I feel like it just captures the moment a lot better than if I were to rehearse what I'm about to say. And sitting here retelling this story, I used to be triggered by them. And as part of the 1-year anniversary, I can honestly say I am still kind of triggered. But I feel a lot better being able to talk about it. Because I now have, after 1 year, I now have an understanding of what I am going through. And none of this would be possible if I didn't have the support of people who encouraged me to really just speak out and speak my truth about what I'm going through mentally. This is when they say, silence can kill people. I don't mean that my silence would have killed people, but I would have probably killed myself. Because I will never forget those nights when I would have those intrusive thoughts and I didn't know what was going on with me. And I said to myself, it would be so much easier if I just offed myself now, because I would never hurt anybody. But I also didn't want to do that because I still have so much to live, you know? Guys, you always have a choice. And for those of you who are suffering the same things that I had suffered, or something similar, always remember this. If you have these thoughts and they induce so much anxiety, knowing you have a mental health disorder, take that by the balls and just tell yourself, this exactly is why I'm having this much anxiety over it, because these are things I don't want to do. And I need to get to the point, like how other people deal with it, where it doesn't bother them, because it shouldn't bother me either, because I know that these are what we say ego dystonic. That's what it is. It's ego dystonic. It's when it's something that is not, within, I don't want to say limits, but within the realm of your own ego, of your own person. And another thing that I learned throughout this year with dealing with these intrusive thoughts and cognitive distortions is, the psychiatrist told me this analogy, and it's actually brilliant, and I think everybody can use this. It doesn't have to be just for OCD, or it could be for everything, but we are just bus drivers, school bus drivers, and the thoughts that come into our head are children in the school bus. And the children, it's a variety of things. They can be mean, they can be nice, they can be loving, they can be scary, they can be violent, they can be anything you can think of. But that's just all they are just kids. They can't do anything to us. They can yell in our ear, maybe even kind of like tap us or whatever, right? But sometimes maybe if the kids are super rowdy, but we are still in control of the bus. And what happens when we start to believe that these children have power over us is we tend to park that bus. We tend to park that bus in a dark tunnel, and we're stuck. We're stuck with those thoughts. We're stuck with those children just yelling in our ear. And that's when we break down. But we always have the power to literally take ourselves off park and keep driving. Because eventually, the bus will reach that kid's destination, that kid will get off, and a new kid will come in. And then you could probably be the same way. Could probably another intrusive thought, another mean one, another nice one, another fun thought. But that's all they are just thoughts. And remember, there's 10,000 thoughts that get into our heads every single day. 10,000. But for people with OCD, or like people who have depression or any other form of mental health disorder, we tend to take that 1 in 10,000 thought and hold on to it, and it's always the worst one. And because we're so fixated on the worst one, we could have 9,999 amazing thoughts that we just kind of let pass by because we are so focused on the one that we are so scared of, the one that we hate, the one we despise. And all we have to do is understand that it's just a thought. There's no need to hold on to it. We can embrace it and say, oh, look, it's a thought and it is happening. But there's in no way should we hold on to it or even try to push it out. Because that's when things get worse. But yeah. I just want to say, I really think I am grateful that this actually happened to me. Because I never would have gone down this road of really trying to find out who I am. Realizing I've had OCD my entire life. A fun fact, one of the things that made me realize I had OCD was when I looked back at it, when I first started touching myself, I could only touch myself on Wednesdays and Fridays. Because I was convinced, because I thought if I touched myself on any other day, bad things will happen. I was 11. I remember I touched myself on a Monday once, and because I thought that way, I failed 2 tests, and I blamed it on that. Totally didn't blame the fact that I didn't study all weekend. I just said, it's because I touched myself today, and it's a Monday. I'm never doing this ever again. Every time my favorite show came on, I would do a ritual. I would make funny noises, make funny faces, and if I didn't do enough of those, it was going to be a bad episode, or it was going to be a rerun. It's never happened before, but because I always did the same amount of faces and noises at the right time. But as kids, we don't tell our parents about these things. As kids, we don't say, oh, I had to do 20 of these and 20 of those so that I can have a good day. No, we're kids. Why the fuck would we tell our parents about that shit? That's our shit. But that's OCD. But honestly, even if I did tell my parents, they would have done jack shit. I lived in the Philippines. Mental health in the Philippines is non-existent. You pray it away. I'm a religious man, and I believe in God, and my faith has actually gotten me through this. I'm not gonna lie to you. It is that extra oomph I needed to stay afloat. But, majority of the people in the Philippines, they don't believe in that shit. They believe if you pray enough, you're good. Not realizing that if you pray enough, God will send you a message saying, hey, this is for your prayers. Actually, see a therapist. That's the answer you're looking for when you pray. No. People just want to believe God will just give you miracles. You don't got to work for it. So yeah. If none of this ever happened to me, I never would have realized that. And imagine if all of this actually really fucked me up at 60. Imagine dealing with what I'm dealing with now at 60. Imagine having cognitive distortions that feel so real, not realizing what they are at 60. Not knowing how to deal with that at 60 years old. It is the scariest thing. And this is why I want to spread the word on mental health and mental health disorders. Because I want everybody to get started while they are younger. To start developing tools to help yourself manage these things while you're younger. So that when shit hits the fan, you know how to handle it. You know how to deal with it. Majority of these things are also why there's so many people who end up committing suicide because they don't understand what's going on in their heads and they believe these cognitive distortions. And it's hard. For some people it is a chemical imbalance that unfortunately, only meds can help with. But they don't even realize that they have that because nobody talks about it enough. Or when they do talk about it, they turn it into something of a taboo. They turn it into something so negative that people don't want to come out and say it. So in this whole entire year, I realized that I am fucking proud that I have OCD. I am so glad. Because I started to feel like I was losing myself in these past few years. And this actually brought me back. The amount of digging I had to do in my past to realize, because one of the things that they tell you to do when you have these kind of like thoughts or whatever, your therapist might ask you to Describe how you were like growing up, your traumas, how you were as a person, how you treated other people. And I've always treated other people the same way. I mean, I was a little brat, kind of, you know. Never really hit anyone. I hit like maybe 3 kids when I was young, out of frustration, because they won a game against me, and I was so mad. Or they annoyed me. I hit my aunt once because she made me cry in a movie theater. But these are normal things. One of the things that I always grew up with and realized, like ever since I was young, was I've always wanted to help people. I loved watching horror movies, and I hated seeing like funny people die. I hated seeing anyone die in horror movies. The only people I wanted to see like get killed were the bad guys. You know, and it's these small little memories that I had that really helped me get to where I am now with my therapy and my recovery and my journey with finding myself again. Because they remind me, oh my god, yeah, I remember how good that felt when I would do this and do that for people. And this is where self-compassion kicks in. Because I'm learning to actually love myself. I'm learning to appreciate myself more. And in doing so, I realized I have amazing friends, I have amazing acquaintances that remind me of this every day, but I always overlooked it because I was so stuck in the zone of negativity that my OCD brings me to. And that might be the same for you guys with whatever you guys are dealing with, that it's so hard to appreciate the things around you. But anyway, I feel like I've spoken enough about this. I felt like I sent that message across, got the point across of my 1 year of what recovery looked like for me. The biggest difference between now and day one was day one of me checking myself into the mental health unit. I said, I want to do this so that I don't have to deal with this anymore, because I want to erase this memory and I'm going to act like this never happened. And now I'm embracing it, because I actually don't want things to go back to how they were before this happened. Because I was turning into not a very great person. I always blamed people. I never took responsibility. I took things for granted, took people for granted. And this, whatever the fuck it was that happened to me, that made my OCD worse, that gave me psychosis for a month, it allowed me to really see the world for what it is and realize that so many of us are struggling, but because we are so entrenched in our own struggles, we fail to accept other people's help. We fail to do the things that we want to do, like help other people. Thanks for the follow, Roy. Sorry, I know we're doing a live episode right now of the show. I know all of you people on Audible, on Spotify, on Apple, on Google, whatever podcast thing you listen to are going to be so confused by what I'm talking about. But, you know, I'm doing this live right now on Twitch, and I'm live on Twitter, and we do have a video companion for this, so it'll be on YouTube as well. But anyway, my point was, the main difference between day one and now is that I am fucking happy that this happened to me, as fucked up as that is. Because I realized, you know what? I now have the ability to really understand people's suffering and pain, and realize that sometimes the solution is not giving them a solution. Sometimes the solution is just to really be there for them. Be an ear, be a distraction if they need one. If they need answers, sure, answer them. But it's about being there for people, even if you don't know the person. Because being able to understand their pain after going through my own, there's nothing better for me than being able to see somebody else be happy again. And I feel like, for most of us, I feel like that's actually what we were meant to do here. But we're just so busy with our other stuff. And that's okay too. But it's just nice to remember every now and then that we're just like each other. This has been a very heavy episode for me. Without having any guests, being able to talk about that stuff, rehashing everything that happened to me. It had to be done because I really wanted to show you guys how far I've come from when it happened until now. Do I still have intrusive thoughts? Yes. Oh God. Yeah. It still pops up in my mind. But I don't run anymore. I go downstairs, I'm chopping meat because I'm making food. My roommates are around. My thoughts go, why don't I just drive this knife into them? I used to wash that knife, tell them, I'm just going to cook later. Go up to my room. Pray, meditate, calm myself down. Then go back down again when they're not there anymore. And now, no. I stand there and I tell myself, nah, that's just an intrusive thought. It's an OCD thought. There's a book that I read called Brain Lock, and it gave me one of the best tools that I've gotten, and it's the 4 R's. When it happens to me now, I look to the 4 R's. One is relabel, in which I relabel that thought as an OCD thought. I reattribute it, like, why is that thought happening? Well, because I have OCD. That's where I reattribute that thought. I refocus on the things that I'm doing. I remind myself, oh, I'm getting distracted now. I'm going to let that thought loop into my head as it does for hours, for days, for weeks, for a year, maybe a month. I don't know. I don't care how long it loops in my head. But I'm going to go finish cooking. And when I've calmed down, I revalue it. I ask myself, was that thought really that important? Or was it just a passing thought? And 100% of the time, it's a passing thought. And because of that, I'm able to habituate that it doesn't descend me into a full-blown panic attack anymore, even if it catches me off guard with these thoughts. So yeah, I feel like I've come a long way, but I still have forever to go. OCD is a forever thing. There is no cure. Saying that used to scare me. Saying that I'm going to have these thoughts forever makes me want to cry, even right now. But at the same time, like what I said, I'm glad that it's happening to me. Because first of all, I don't want any of my friends to go through this shit. Because I don't think there's, like, no offense to my friends, I love you all, but I don't think y'all are strong enough to do what I'm doing. Y'all will fall the fuck apart. I know it. I'm sorry, I know it. But, I'm glad I'm the guinea pig for my friends to deal with these things. Because I've been through so much growing up. And it's funny, isn't it funny? It's always the ones who had a traumatic childhood that goes through these things. And I feel like it's because the universe knows you can handle it. Now it's up to you what you can do with that knowledge. Are you going to keep it for yourself so that you can keep being strong in this world? Or are you going to share with other people how you deal with it? So that there could be more of you to help other people out. So think about that. But yeah, it's a forever thing. And you know what? It's fine. Because I want to see what this looks like 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. I want to see what living with OCD feels like when I finally mastered everything. Because I've had OCD my entire fucking life. It's just that now I'm aware. I wasn't aware before, now I am. And I guess it's kind of like what they say, sometimes it's best not knowing because you don't know how you're going to feel once you know. It's like cheating, it's like being cheated on, right? I thought it was better that I didn't know I had OCD. But then I realized how many things in my life I've destroyed because of it. And that stops now. So guys, on a final note, if you are actually dealing with mental health disorders and you haven't spoken to anybody about it, try talking to one person who you know will have your back. And if you feel like you don't have anyone like that, go see a therapist. Because guaranteed they will have your back, because first of all, you paying them for it, bitch. Like, yo, they better have your back. Like, goddamn. I'ma sue their asses if they don't got mine. It'll be confidential. And you can guarantee that you won't be judged. But I'm telling y'all, if you feel like you're going through something, go talk. You can even talk to me. I don't know you guys. You can message me. Although it's going to be hard, especially on Twitter, because message requests are crazy sometimes. Like, I don't even realize I have a message request, and then it's just kind of like, what the heck is that? There's so many people. But, you know, for those of you who are watching this or have watched this or have been involved in my podcast before, I always leave my link at the end, right? At stevendiego@hotmail.com. You can email me there. That's my work email. stephendiego@hotmail.com. I know I just said that here, and like, maybe did I just expose myself to alter Twitter? Yeah. But you can find a lot of shit about me online, go ahead. But, you know, the only thing I care about is my socials. I privatize that. Otherwise, I'm an open book. But feel free to reach out to me if you guys need somebody to talk to about these things and you don't know where to start. But if you still don't want to talk to anyone about it, that's also okay. But just please allow yourselves, if you want to do your own thing, go ahead. Allow yourselves to learn about cognitive behavioral therapy. And there's so many tools that you can actually use for yourselves, that you don't really need a professional to kind of like, you know, it would be nice to have a professional teach you it, but we're in the age of self-learning, and I know you guys can pick it up and really help yourselves deal with your cognitive distortions on your own if you don't want to talk to other people about it. Just guys, always remember, we have the tools to get ourselves out of this funk, out of the black hole, out of this rut. And we can do it. And always know you're never alone. But yes, guys, if you have any questions, if you want to talk to me, if you want to be on the show, right, just email me. We will set something up. You want to share your stories, your truths. Thank you so much again for tuning in. Thank you for listening, guys. Thank you for watching. I know this might be boring for some of you, but I hope some of you learned something. This has been Breaking Down the Breakdown. Always remember to be compassionate to other people and to yourselves, because you just never know what anybody's going through. And I appreciate you too, Sentinel. Thank you. I appreciate you guys a lot. But anyways, that's it for now. Good night and goodbye. Thank you again.